A pleasant and enthusiastic day, everyone, especially to our dynamic instructor in readings in the Philippine history, Mang Ivy Diaz. I am Derf Alline Lloren Patalinghug from BSED English 1, and today we will be discussing about child abuse. In addition, in this discussion, I am with 5 young empowered women, namely Jemaica Cañon, Charmaine Rivas, Mae Tesado, Rochelle Monter, and Evelyn Maiso. However, before we proceed to our proper discussion, may I ask first all of you here about child abuse? Nice. Very good. I am pleased for your answers. I am glad that all of you have prior knowledge about child abuse and that you understand that it is such a cruel and inhuman act. But again, we are here to give you information, prevention, and accurate discussion and illustration regarding the issue about child abuse here in our country. Listen attentively and take note because all of our discussion are very relevant and it will give you the strength to speak out about abuse in any form. To give you an explicit information and understanding, physical, psychological, and sexual and cyber violence against Filipino children are all common according to the 2015 National Baseline Survey on Violence Against Children in the Philippines. 80% of Filipino children have been victims of violence at home, at school, their communities, or online. These are frequently carried out by persons they trust. Despite the high rate of violence, 7 out of 10 youngsters are unaware of programs that could assist them. Children who are in dispute with the law are frequently punished and denied a second chance at life. The Philippines has one of the lowest sexual consent ages in the world. At 12 years old, during emergencies, children are also more vulnerable to violence. Children are particularly vulnerable to violence, human trafficking, and stress in the aftermath of natural catastrophes. Thousands of youngsters in the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao are affected by armed violence. If they are not recruited by armed organizations, they may be maimed, abducted, sexually exploited, or even killed if they are caught in the crossfire.
Hi everyone, I am Mae Tesado. To continue the discussion of Mr. Derf, I am going to discuss the risk factors for child neglect and abuse. So here are some factors that increase the risk of child neglect and abuse are poverty, drug and alcohol abuse, mental health disorders, and single parenthood. Children who have been neglected or abused may appear exhausted, hungry, or dirty, or they may appear entirely normal. They may also have physical injuries, emotional or mental disorders, or they may appear completely normal. Abuse should be always suspected when the pattern of injury suggests that the injury was not accidental, when injuries do not match the caregiver's explanation, when children are not developmentally able to do the things that could result in their injury, such as an infant turning on a stove, or when the children have both healed and new injuries that do not appear accidental. Children should be protected from further harm by means that may include involvement of child protective services and or lower enforcement agencies, hospitalization, counseling for parents and children, and assistance for the family in providing safe and appropriate care. Violence against women and their children, or VAUCI, chooses no time or place. During the enhanced community quarantine, let us remain vigilant to the VAUCI that happens in the confines the homes in our communities. If you personally know someone being abused during this time of health emergency, don't hesitate to seek help to stop the abuse. Furthermore, I am going to discuss what are neglect and abuse. When we say neglect, it involves not meeting children's basic needs like physical, medical, educational, and emotional. However, abuse can be physical, sexual, or emotional. It can also involve child abuse in a medical setting. So, child neglect and abuse are frequently linked to other forms of family violence, such as intimate partner violence. Neglect and abuse raise the chance of long-term problems, including as mental health issues and substance abuse, in addition to acute injury. Adult problems such as obesity, heart disease, and chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases are linked to the child abuse or COPD. So, here are the some factors for child neglect and abuse. Individual, family, and society variables all play a role in child neglect and abuse. Being a single parent, being poor, having drug or alcohol misuse problems, having a mental illness such as personality disorder or low self-esteem, or a combination of these variables can make a parent more prone to neglect or abuse a child. Adults who were abused physically or sexually as children are also more likely to abuse their own children. Those who live in poverty are 12 times more likely to be subjected to abuse than children who do not. Parents who are first-time parents, adolescent parents, or parents who have many children under the age of 5 are also more likely to abuse their children. Smoking, taking drugs, or having a history of domestic violence while pregnant may put their children at risk of maltreatment. A strong emotional relationship between parents and children may not always develop. This lack of bonding is more common in preterm or unwell newborns who are separated from their parents early in life, as well as biologically unrelated children such as stepchildren, and it raises the likelihood of abuse. Despite the fact that physical abuse, mental abuse, and neglect are linked to poverty and a lower social and economic standing, all forms of abuse, including sexual abuse, occur in all social and economic categories.
Hi, I am teacher Micah, and I will be discussing to you now the types of child neglect and abuse. Is anyone here of you experienced being abused with your parents? Alright, if you don't know even yet what type of abuse did you experience, well, you can listen to my discussion and learn that kind of thing. So, additionally, intentionally causing, lying about, or exaggerating medical symptoms in a child that results in potentially harmful medical interventions is a form of abuse called child abuse in a medical setting. So, there are four main types of child abuse. Number one, neglect. Neglect is the failure to provide for or meet a child's basic physical, emotional, educational, and medical needs. Parents may leave a child in the care of a person who is known to be abusive, or they may leave a young child unattended. Physical abuse. Physical abuse is often triggered by a crisis in the midst of other stresses. A crisis may be a loss of a job, a death in the family, or a discipline problem. Parents who use drugs or alcohol may behave impulsively and uncontrollably toward their children. Children whose parents have mental health problems are also at increased risk of being abused. Parents who were neglected or abused as children may not be emotionally mature or may have low self esteem. Abusive parents may see their children as a source of unlimited and unconditional affection and look to them for the support that they had never received. And as a result, they may have unrealistic expectations of what their children can provide for them. They may become frustrated easily and have poor impulse control, and they may be unable to give what they never receive. Number three, emotional abuse. Using words or actions to psychologically mistreat a child is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse makes children feel that they are worthless, flawed, unloved, and wanted, in danger, or valuable only when they meet another person's needs. Emotional abuse includes harshly scolding by yelling or screaming, belittling the child's abilities and accomplishments. So, lastly, sexual abuse. Any action with a child that is for the sexual gratification of an adult or a significantly older or more powerful child is considered sexual abuse. It includes penetrating the child's vagina, anus, or mouth, touching the child with sexual intention but without penetration, or called molestation, exposing the abuser's genital or showing pornography to a child, or forcing a child to participate in a sex act with another child, using a child in the production of pornography. So, sexual abuse does not only a sexual play. In sexual play, children who are close in age view or touch each other's genital area without force or intimidation. So, did you understand our topic for today about the types of child abuse? All right. Thank you for listening.
Hello! Good day, everyone. I am Charmaine Rivas. I will share to you the types of child neglect and abuse, as well as the symptoms of child neglect and abuse. The first type of child neglect and abuse is a child abuse in a medical setting, intentionally causing, lying about, or exaggerating medical symptoms in a child that results in potentially harmful medical interventions. Munchausen syndrome by proxy is now called factitious disorder imposed on another. A caregiver intentionally tries to make doctors think that a healthy child is sick. The caregiver typically gives false information about the child's symptoms. For example, a caregiver stating that the child has been vomiting or complaining abdominal pain, but the child has not been vomiting or complaining. The second type is cultural factors. Different cultures have different ways to discipline children. Some cultures use corporal punishment, which is any punishment that is physical and causes pain. Severe corporal punishment, which includes whipping, burning, and scalding, is physical abuse. Members of certain religious and cultural groups have sometimes failed to obtain treatment for a child who has a life-threatening disorder such as diabetic ketoacidosis or meningitis resulting to the child's death. Such failure is typically considered neglect regardless of the parents' or caregiver's intent, which children are ill or unhealthy. Refusal of medical treatment often requires further investigation and sometimes legal intervention. We are now the symptoms of child neglect and abuse. The symptoms of neglect and abuse vary depending partly on the nature and duration of the neglect or abuse, on the child and on the particular circumstances. The first symptoms is physical neglect. Parents and caregiver may fail to provide adequate food, clothing, shelter, supervision, and protection from potential harm. Physically neglected children may appear undernourished, tired, or dirty, or may be failing to thrive. They may frequently be absent from school. In extreme cases, children may be found living alone or with siblings without adult supervision. The second is physical abuse. Physical abuse is intentionally bodily abuse. It is an act causing injury or trauma to another person by way of bodily contact, and a physical force puts you in danger. Infants may have been brain injury resulting from what is now called abusive head trauma or AHT. AHT is caused by violent shaking and or hitting the child's head against a firm object. Abusive heat trauma has replaced the term shaken baby symptoms because more than shaking may be involved. Bruises, burns, welts, bites, marks, scrapes are some of the signs of physical abuse. The children's skin may have handprints or round fingertips mark caused by slapping or grabbing and shaking. Next symptoms is sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is unwanted sexual activity with predators using force, making threats, or taking advantage of victims not able to give consent. Changes behavior are common signs of sexual abuse. Such changes may occur abruptly and may be extreme. Children may become aggressive or withdrawn or develop phobias or sleep disorders. Children who are sexually abused may show sexual behavior that are not appropriate. Children who are sexually abused by a parent or other family members may have conflicted feelings. They may feel emotionally close to the abuser, yet betrayed. Sexual abuse may also result in physical injuries. Children may have bruises, tears, or bleeding in areas around the genitals, anus, or mouth. Girls may have vaginal discharge, bleeding, or itching. The last symptom is emotional abuse and neglect. Emotional abuse is a pattern of behavior that damages a child's sense of self-worth. It is a purposeful choice to act in a way that is harmful. Emotional neglect is not an act, but a failure to act. In general, children who are emotionally abused tend to be insecure and anxious about their attachments to other people because they have not had their needs met consistently and predictably. Children may have self-esteem who are terrorized or threatened may appear fearful or withdrawn. Infants who are emotionally neglected commonly fail to thrive and may seem unemotional and uninterested in their surroundings. Their behavior may be mistaken for intellectual disability or a physical disorder. They may be insecure, distrustful, unassertive, and extremely anxious to please others. Children who are not allowed to interact with others may be awkward in social situations and have difficulty forming formal relationships. Others may commit and abuse alcohol and drugs. And that ends my part. The next reporter will proceed.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Monter, the reporter for Diagnosis of Neglect and Abuse. Neglect and abuse are often difficult to recognize unless children are severely undernourished or obviously injured or unless neglect or abuse is witnessed by the other people. Abused children may feel that abuse is a normal part of life and may not mention it. Physically and sexually abused children are often reluctant to volunteer information about their abuse because of shame, threats of retaliation, or even a feeling that they deserve abuse. However, sexually abused children may be sworn to secrecy or so traumatized that they are not able to talk about the abuse and may even deny abuse when specifically questioned. Doctors observe interactions between the child and the caregivers whenever it is possible. Neglect and emotional abuse. Neglected child may be identified by healthcare practitioners during an evaluation for an unrelated issue, such as an injury, an illness, or a behavioral problem. Teachers and social workers are often the first to recognize neglect because the teachers may identify a neglected child abuse because of frequent unexplained absences from school. Emotional abuse is usually identified during evaluation for another problem, such as poor performance in school or a behavioral problem. Physical abuse may be suspected when an infant who is not yet cruising, walking by holding onto furniture, has bruises or serious injury or seemingly minor injuries to the face and or neck. Moreover, abuse may be suspected when a toddler or older child has bruises in unusual locations, such as on the back of the legs and buttocks. Sexual abuse is diagnosed on the basis of the child's or witness account of the incident. Doctors usually suspect sexual abuse if a young child has a sexually transmitted infection. And that ends my part. Thank you and God bless.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Maiso, and I will be discussing the proposed solution to child abuse. First, we have the DSWD. The DSWD who is responsible for taking care of the children being neglected. If we have the nearest branch in town, we can report it to them for they take immediate action. Any person witnessing the abuse of a child can file a complaint, and a child can stay there temporarily under the custody of the DSWD. Second, immediate treatment for the physical injuries. DSWD office also have doctors for a proper treatment of children in pain. Third, mental and emotional treatment to prevent change of behavior that would lead to self-violence or harm to others. And last but not the least, number 4, proper parenting program. Whether the parents are abusive to their children or not, they still need proper guidance to avoid child abuse. There's nothing wrong with parents teaching their children good manners, but others would take it to the next level which resulted to abuse. Kabataan ng pag-asa ng bayan. But how can we give hope to young people when they are already aware of violent behavior from their parents?